Good morning to the UK column audience, whether you're viewing or listening, welcome. And I've got to say, it's an absolutely wonderful day in Plymouth. The sun has decided to come back, and it's a sunny day, which is always a great start to whatever you're going to do. Now, today we are going to be speaking to the Heritage Party, and in particular to their parliamentary candidate for South West Devon constituency, and that's Darryl Ingram. And he's also going to be joined by Madeline Hunt, who's the General Secretary for the Heritage Party. And I'll say to our audience today that UK Column has done a couple of interviews previously with the Heritage Party, which I found particularly interesting, mainly as a result of Madeline's background in Poland, where she was able to talk about things she'd seen unfold in Poland during very troubled times. And she was reflecting on similarities with the things that she's observed operating in UK. So that was particularly interesting to me. But UK Column's also been able to facilitate a symposium for the Heritage Party, which was under the title Defying the Real Enemy. And for me, this is one of the key points. We've got an election. This is to get people elected, obviously, to represent their constituents within the various constituency areas. But ultimately, we know that something is badly wrong in this country, and we need a change in politics, and that means new people. So, Darryl, straight away, I'm going to welcome you to UK Column.
Thank you very much, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And we'll also bring in Madeline, General Secretary. It's very nice to have you back again, Madeline.
It's very nice to be back here. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Darryl, we had a chat on the phone the other day, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This was just for me to get a little bit of a feel for you and what you're up to. But today you've got the opportunity to talk to UK Column audience. And I'd like to start off with a simple question. Tell us a bit about why you're standing in the South West Devon election as a Heritage Party candidate.
Well, Brian, I'm basically born and bred from Plymouth, working class, just a normal chap off the street, really. The reason I'm standing is because it all started basically a year ago when they chopped the trees down in Plymouth. I'd never been politically active, never gave it a thought. In fact, it sounded a bit repugnant to me becoming part of the establishment, quite honest with you. So basically, after they chopped the trees down, I was so angry. I joined the Heritage Party the day after. I'd been looking at them for a while because their values aligned with mine almost perfectly. I joined on the Wednesday. I think the trees come down on the Tuesday. I joined the Heritage Party on the Wednesday. By the Thursday, I'd already been elected. I'd already gone for local councillor. So within 3 days, I'd gone from just a member of the public to a council candidate. Such was my fury and anger, really. I mean, to me, the trees were the last straw for me. And some of the excuses I was getting off the council for their felling was just plain ridiculous. I don't think the councillors understood the reason themselves. So I just thought, well, I've got to do something. You know, I can't just stand here and just let this happen to my beloved city. So I decided to put my head above the parapet. I then subsequently did 3 elections after that, all in a row, because we had by-elections. It was a bit of a wild time for me. Then we've had a gap in between, and I was asked by the Heritage Party to be prospective candidate for MP Plymouth, Devon South West, and I couldn't really refuse. Really, I was a bit reluctant, I must admit, Brian, but I think this is something you have to see through to the end. I mean, the way I was brought up dictates I do something about this, or try to do something about this. So here we are.
Darryl, thank you for that. Just to set the scene a bit for people who may be watching or listening in from further afield, when you're talking about the trees, these were trees that were cut down in the centre of Plymouth. And a lot of people were stunned that Plymouth is quite let's describe it. It's quite a hard city from a point of view of the architecture. It was rebuilt just after the Second World War with the so-called Abercrombie Plan. It's got a lot of very big buildings, Portland stone, wide streets, and the trees really were one of the things that softened it. And then suddenly they were cut down, and they were cut down overnight. And of course, we've seen previously that sort of thing happening in Sheffield. So I just want to drop that in just to enable viewers and listeners to know you were talking about Plymouth as a city.
Yes, that's right, Brian. It was Abercrombie, and it was post-industrial design, quite Stalinist in its design. The trees did soften it up. Lovely centre. I remember it when I was a child and in my teens. Very clean. All the shops were occupied. And now with the trees gone, and they've left them there because they're in dispute, it looks awful. It looks terrible. And I think one of the excuses I had off a Conservative councillor was we took the trees down because there's rubble under the city. I said, well, I do know that. He said, and they're interfering with the rubble. I said, well, it's funny that because the rubble's been there for 80 years, 70, 80 years. The trees have been there for 30 years. He said, yes, that's right. We were actually thinking of taking these trees down 20 years ago. I said, I remember when they went in the early 90s, they would have been saplings. Why would you take them down? I said, trees like the root system likes rubble, it likes stones, it likes something grappled up. Does that make sense to you? And he couldn't answer the question because that's the narrative he'd been fed from the top down.
So, Darryl, if trees were an important issue, you felt passionate about that, and that got you to step forward and ultimately become a candidate. What else was it that you've been seeing within the country? Are there other things that you've been noting, and it's helped give you this desire to stand up and do something?
As I say, Brian, for me, the trees were an act of vandalism to Plymouth, but I've been aware for many years of the cultural Marxism agenda to hollow out the West. And obviously, we live in the West, and Plymouth's a part of the West. And it's nationwide, it's Europe-wide, it's America. The West is being hollowed out piece by piece, sold off to the highest bidder. And it breaks my heart and angers me, Brian. It really does. I'll use Plymouth as an example, but I travel all over the country because I'm a courier, and I see it everywhere, all over the country. There's deprivation all over the country. It's the same pattern, as I'm sure your viewers have witnessed for themselves. It's just shops empty, tents in doorways, homeless people. They should be given somewhere to go. I'm not blaming the homeless people. They're victims here. It's just deprivation everywhere you look. It's a terrible thing to see, and it's not just the hollowing out of the actual buildings as well. It's the hollowing out of the government, the police, our NHS, all our institutions are being hollowed out piece by piece and dismantled, and it's quite scary. I've been aware of that for years, but it really came home to Plymouth that day, and it was just the last straw for me. Often the last straw is the smallest straw, but that's what did it for me anyway.
Thank you for that. I'm thinking myself that probably there's some people who'll be with us and listening to what you're talking about will maybe be surprised that you've thrown in a pretty strong statement, which is Marxism, and you're describing the breakdown of the country. Something that stuck in my mind from many years ago was a statement by the then Conservative MP Nick Bowles, who talked about the Conservatives introducing a period of what he said was creative destruction in order to change society in this country. And that was also reinforced at the time by a man called Danny Kruger, who was a prospective parliamentary candidate for the Conservatives in that same time frame. And he also said something very similar publicly. So for the audience, I'm going to say that you've made that statement, but if people do their own research and go and have a look at what the Conservative Party has talked about in previous years, it's absolutely true that they've talked about breaking down society to bring in with change, which they don't define, and a new type of society. And of course, we had Eric Pickles, who was the communities minister, who was busy boasting that he didn't look like it, but he said, the quote is, I may look an unlikely revolutionary, but the revolution starts here. So I'll just throw that in to reinforce what you're talking about, that we've seen a massive change in society, and this has only come about through the works of the key parties.
Yes, that's right. Basically, this has been going on for the last at least 50 years. I mean, the Marxists realised that they couldn't have a class war here because everyone was fairly comfortable compared with the East. So they had to do something else. So they basically dissecting society into small pieces, of pitting basically small groups, LGBT, whatever, and NGOs as well. They're involved.
They're pitting them against each other, is what you're saying there, which I think more and more people realise. So, Darryl, it takes a lot of courage to actually stand up as a candidate. Tell us a little bit about how you found the process and what sort of support you've been able to get as you've done that.
The bureaucracy is crazy. It's just layers and layers of bureaucracy. And it, quite honestly, Brian, it feels like it's been put there on purpose. We, the Heritage Party, and other small candidates, independents, the socialists, everyone's finding it hard to get hustings. We're not being told. This is going on across the nation. We've had numerous reports of this. So to get our voice out there is really, really something else. You know, it should be inclusive to everyone. We're supposed to live in a democracy, in name at least. But I must admit, going through this process, the vetting from the post office for the leaflets is ultra bureaucratical. It just seems they've put all this in your way. The big parties won't have this problem. One, they've got a brand, and two, they've got huge teams behind them. And obviously, the government that call the election, they know well in advance when they're going to call that. They have a lot of time on us. 6 weeks is not enough. I was speaking to the lady in the council that helps you run, takes you through the process basically, and she said we normally get 9 months. 6 weeks is not enough. I asked her how long, what's the shortest possible time they could give us. She said 6 weeks. She said we have to do 9 months of work in 6 weeks, and we're finding the same. We haven't got the infrastructure the big parties have got. Another thing that I firmly disagree with is I found this out when I was running for councillor. You basically become a ballot. You go on the ballot on the Friday, and by the Monday they've already got the first postal votes out, which gives you no time. And I actually brought this up in the council, and I said, "Do you think the system to me looks?" I didn't say rigged, but I said it looks biased. It's biased toward smaller parties who haven't got the brand, who need more time. Being a smaller party as well, we're admin-wise, we're very thin on the ground, so we have to do everything. And the thing is, we get tied up with bureaucracy and red tape before we can even go out and campaign. So they've already, the large parties have already got a good start on us, really. So, and it feels to me, it's really opened my eyes. It feels to me it's deliberate.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is, but it's what it feels like to me.
Darryl, that's a key statement, isn't it? It's opened your eyes. You stepped up for the challenge of as standing as a parliamentary candidate, and the whole process. You've learned stuff through that as well. And I pick up on the hustings thing. For people who don't know that word, it's basically where candidates can come together in a group in order to say why they're standing and talk about their policies and what they hope to achieve. But it's done in it should be done in a friendly environment where the public can sit in front of all of the candidates and hear what each one of them has to say. But in previous elections, I'm going to say when I stood many years ago as a parliamentary candidate in Sutton, inside Plymouth, I also found that I wasn't invited to hustings, that hustings were set up, and I'd suddenly discover one was going to happen. And indeed, one in the Baptist church in Plymouth, I had to be pretty forceful to get in. And as an independent, I wasn't allowed to stand, I wasn't allowed to sit on the platform with the other candidates, but I was given 3 minutes to speak from the floor. So I'm going to say personally, I absolutely understand what you're talking about. It's as though the whole election system does not want candidates apart from the mainstream parties.
Well, I say we've had a lot of trouble. One of our candidates disclosed on a Zoom meeting the other day that she wasn't invited to hustings, basically. She went in and demanded her seat in front of the audience. They were all there. She basically said, I have a democratic right to be here. We haven't been invited. Can I please have a seat? They gave her one with much embarrassment. But she had to go and demand her place in a democracy. It should be there for you. It's not. It's very biased, the whole system. And especially for me, I find the postal system, postal votes, bias as well. And a lot of this started after the lockdowns. It used to be, I remember it used to be for disabled people, elderly people, people who couldn't make it to the polling station. Now, as in America, it seems the norm. 60% now, 60% vote by post. Well, as I said to the council, that how secure is that? What happens to those votes once you get them? Where are they stored? Is there a camera on them? No. Although you're invited to go to see them open them and verify the signatures. To me, that's not good enough. To me, they could be manhandled at any point, interfered with at any point whilst they're on their property. Now, somebody who votes in person is a lot more secure. I'm very pro vote in person. They count the van down from loading to unloading. 20 minutes, I think they get to get into Plymouth, and put on the table, as opposed to postal votes are just stored. Yes, they're opened in front of your eyes and verified, but to me, I've got quite a suspicious nature, and I think, well, it's open to abuse. It's open to abuse, and the government have been very pro postal votes since. The same's happened with Trump in America. They're getting problems. Maybe the Democrats are, but it's all since COVID, basically. It's these emergency measures. They're still using these emergency measures.
Yeah, Darryl, this is a really interesting point. Perhaps this is a good time to bring Madeline in, because one of the questions I'd like to ask her is about resources, because you've mentioned that the mainstream parties have got massive amounts of money. We reported on the news a couple of days ago that the Tories were sitting on donations of about 44.5 million. Labour was 21.6 million. Lib Dems 610,000, and Reform Party 255,000. We'll say 250,000. And the smaller parties, of course, have to get by with very limited resources. So, Madeline, welcome to today's discussion. And how have you found the whole process of electioneering?
I agree with Darryl completely. This is terrible bureaucracy. It's terrible bureaucracy, and I think we're meeting so many obstacles of design, especially to be performed during the election time. Hustings is one thing, and of course the funds. The funds is the probably the biggest problem of any smaller party, because most of the little parties live on the support from their members, nothing else. Of course, this is always a very tempting donors coming. Everyone is approached with donors. This is no party in this world which actually doesn't have, at least at some point, a donor who is coming and saying, look, I will really support you. I will donate money. You will be great and big in no time. But any kind of donation which is so generous usually come with conditions. And unfortunately, that is the point when some parties which could be good and sound promising, they just losing their grants because they going for the honey trap practically. So most of the parties really rely on the members, and that is giving us, obviously, as I mentioned previously, that we have to print the flyers, which cost really a massive amount of money because we're talking about 100,000 flyers. Another thing is even the deposit itself. Deposit for one candidate is £500. So if you want to have a 600 candidates, you have to be a proper solid party with a mysterious millionaire donors and to actually help every candidate to stand. So that is the downside of the system again, because that is obviously just putting us straight away on the very bottom. And not only the funds, the kind of publicity what the other party have, that's go in pair probably with the same donors. That's my personal suspicion. But I can give you some example what I actually went through a few days ago, and I was quite disappointed. We have some Christian institute. I don't know if people are aware of that, but it is our Christian institute in UK. Lots of Christians are members of this institute. Somebody sent me an email from the Christian Institute informing people about the election, the general election, and that was a very nice text and very nice video introducing people to the fact that they should vote very wisely. And all the information about general election, the institute just make the point that they normally don't mix up with politics, but at this stage it is important. I totally 100% agree that they pass the message to their own members, to the Christians. But then they analyze the parties which the Christian members should pay attention to. And as you know, our party, the Heritage Party, based on the Christian principles, we really strongly base on the Christian principles. And I think we are the only party who actually does. And we also, even with the candidates what we have quite a few, we managed to be in the first top 10 parties, which is a high position to be with the number of candidates. So we are in the 10 imported parties to analyze and vote for. However, the Christian Institute didn't include our name in the list. So I was rather surprised, and the person I know contacted them and said, look, I am really disappointed because I know about Heritage Party. That's the party what I follow because of their Christian principles. So if you're deciding to involve the Christian members in the politics, what you're actually doing the right thing at the moment, why don't you introduce them to the whole list of all parties? If you're trying to give people a choice and encouraging them to analyze parties, why you don't print the whole list, everyone? And the excuse was really poor because they, in reply, they said, "Oh, this is I really apologize, but we didn't have a place on the website. We didn't have a place, and we didn't have a time to include all parties. So we only analyze parties which have the biggest possibility to win, which are the most popular, and the parties which have the most candidates." So hold on. So actually, that is straight away suggestion to people: forget about the others, and this is the party to focus on. And this is a Christian institute, which especially is really upsetting. But this kind of attitude we can actually see from any other media as well. So that's another obstacle. And the funds important because if we have a funds, we can actually buy posters and put them on the buses.
Thank you for that. Just before we bring Darryl back on screen, you said to me earlier you were feeling very tired. So the whole team is having to do your best to get over these obstacles. And you said it was very difficult for a small party to do this?
It is very difficult. It's not only for us, but because we are not that small, but they are smaller parties, which again they don't really have a massive support, and they are completely forgotten. They are not included in the lists when the lists are published. So it's not fair. This is supposed to be a democratic system, as Darryl mentioned, and it doesn't look like democracy at all. And I think we talked about this before. So I remember this from Poland, to the point when actually we came to the point of not having any party, just having one. And I think we're going to this direction very, very fast.
In UK, you mean? We are heading in this direction very fast in UK. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Darryl, let's bring you back. You're now in the seat, and you're fighting to the best of your ability in this election. How have you found people when you've been canvassing, when you've been talking to people about what you're trying to do? How have they responded?
Well, to be quite honest with you, Brian, we haven't done a lot of canvassing. We've been so tied up in bureaucracy. But I take part in a outreach in my spare time in the city centre. We're there most weeks, and we basically cover all these subjects anyway. People are very receptive. The main thing I get from people is, we've never heard of you. We love your policies, but we've never heard of you. I certainly got that with the council elections. They just haven't heard of us. And just to say, if I may, Brian, further from what Madeline was just saying about democracy. I mean, there was a time not so long ago where your MP represented you, the constituent. He would take your concerns to Parliament and air them to Parliament. That's bottom up. That's how democracy should work. But more and more, it seems to be inverted the other way around. Basically, the governments and the opposition as well, they're basically formulating policies with the help of think tanks, NGOs, big business, big pharma, lobbyists, etc. And they're basically dictating to us, the constituents, how it's going to be, like it or lump it. That's not democracy. That's a dictatorship to me. And it's been like that for a long time. And it's getting worse. Money is driving government now, not the people. It always feels like we're indentured slaves. We were. And that really drives me. The thought of that really drives me. And that's why this needs a real strong opposition. The problem is not government. The problem is lack of opposition. There's no opposition. We have a two-party system. It's two cheeks of the same. And they both work for the same people, the globalists. You need a strong opposition in there. I'll give you an example with the trees in Plymouth. Now, if there had been independents and, say, the Heritage Party, there'd have been a true opposition in the chambers of the council. They could have opposed that, and they could have stopped that. And that works countrywide. There's no opposition to this government. They're out of control. And also, Mr. Farage, who, I agree with on a lot of things. He said something the other day, which I didn't agree with. He said, basically, we are now the new opposition. The official opposition. Well, who watches the watchers? You need a diverse opposition, like they have in Europe, where independents, smaller parties can get together and block these things. It's still a two-part. If Mr. Farage was to be the official opposition, it would still be a two-party system. Other than proportional representation, which I would love to see, by the way, I think that's a lot fairer. At least we could have a strong opposition that can actually block these silly and utter destructive policies that seem to be handed down to us. So I think that if we don't get in, you need an opposition. So I would say to the voter, I know Reform are in the limelight at the moment because they've got more money than we've got. But I would implore the voter to please have a look at our policies and think of what we could do if we were in a position of opposition. We might not be the official opposition, but we're in there. and we can change things. I mean, Andrew Bridgen's one man, he seems to do a lot of damage in there, you know. So if think of us as think of me as a Andrew Bridgen, your local Andrew Bridgen. I'll certainly create a stir in there, and they won't be getting try to block them anyway. At least it's a step in the right direction.
Darryl, we have over the years seen the effect that one or two independents can have. Certainly at local council level, when local elections have produced independent candidates, and those candidates have stood up to be counted inside the local authority, they've had a very big effect. I would suggest bigger than their actual numbers. And if we can get parliamentary independents elected, or independents, or parties like the Heritage Party, this means that there can actually be some formal opposition. And I completely take your point over reform. To say that you're going to be the official opposition means actually that you're part of this controlled game. Just to move on a little bit, Darryl, can you tell us a little bit about your policies for the party and what you would hope to achieve if you're elected? What would you be fighting for as an MP?
I've just got a little list here in no particular order, but we have to defend our culture, which has been torn apart at the seams. We are called the Heritage Party. We're all about culture. That's buildings, that's actual culture itself. And the fabric of this country is being torn apart. I don't recognise it anymore. Definitely put a curtail mass immigration. A lot of these people are, they're economic migrants. They're supposed to be stopping at the nearest safe country. Well, that's not the UK. That's not even France. They're coming here for economical reasons. They're a drain on our resources. I've nothing against them personally. I can understand why they would want to be here, because the government's policies with the welfare system are so generous to them. So who wouldn't want to come here? So it's not them I'm blaming. They're just a product of the policies our government have on that. The farm, Dartmoor, for one, they're talking about taking the livestock off Dartmoor. Well, Dartmoor is Dartmoor. I mean, it was a forest many years ago, 1,000 years ago, but it is a beautiful place. It is what it is because of livestock. Livestock create Dartmoor. It's the livestock today, it's the farmers tomorrow, and then it's get rid of the green belt, which Mr. Starmer has already announced he will do. He will get rid of the green belts. So basically, we could see the end of a national park. That's another one. The NHS, far too much bureaucracy, far too many middle managers. They're a drain on the resources. They're a parasitico. They're telling the doctors their jobs, you can't do that. We haven't got enough money. We need quotas. It's a drain on the NHS. So that would be another one. We got global to local. That's a huge issue. That's what we talk about when we're in town on our meetings. Global to local, just briefly, is basically our councils now are being run by the UN and the WEF and the WHO. Government are retaining certain powers, but it's coming straight down from the top, global to local. And the public get this. When I didn't expect that response from them. I expected them to sort of look at me with glazed eyes, but they get it because they feel it. Funds are being drawn out of our public sector in Plymouth and everywhere else in the country, and they go to the top to fund wars and such things. I spoke to a social worker a few weeks ago, and she said, we cannot get funds for love or money. But she couldn't understand where the money's going. That's another thing as well. Social housing, social services, immigration is, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, are under the guise of social housing and social welfare. It's almost like it was hidden on purpose. let's hide this money. Let's put it under a new name, sweep it under that carpet, and nobody will know. That's going on. So, we'd like to address that. Animal rights is a big one. Madeline's the one for that. She's a big animal lover. Now, no party's talking about animal rights. Nobody. And we used to be known as the caring country. We used to be, the RSPCA was the envy of the world. The British, they're animal lovers, they're dog lovers. Not so much anymore. Say that goes back to us losing our heritage. So that's one more example. Yeah, that's basically it. Really. Let's see. Just in very brief, I won't touch on this, but 5G towers seem to be going up everywhere without very little plan mission. They go up overnight. It's just wow. It's just, in my view, it's just too much of it. I would like to address that.
It's very interesting listening to what you're saying, because you've immediately given a mix of things which are sort of national policies, if you're talking global to local, and the power of the organizations like the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum, and even individuals like Mr. Bill Gates. We're clearly seeing the immense power of unaccountable individuals and bodies directly affecting political policy inside the UK. But you've mentioned that sort of thing. And then you've also come down to very local issues. Well, you started on the subject of trees, very important to a lot of people, but you're also talking about the changes that they are pushing very hard to change the whole way that Dartmoor works. Now, this is a very local issue. And of course, one of the things that I see with politicians from the mainstream parties is increasingly then they don't seem concerned with local issues within their constituencies. They are totally caught up with the larger policies. And if I just make an example of that, I've got the Conservative website up with their plan for clear plan, bold action, secure future. And what are they talking about? They're talking about security, national insurance, pensions, and childcare. So the main parties always come in with these very big policy areas, but their individual candidates and their MPs are not addressing matters which are important to the local people.
Well, Brian, these are globalist policies. These are passed down from way higher than our government. I mean, maybe the viewer has heard of localism, leveling up. It's all part of the same agenda. Basically, they're not worried about local issues anymore. It's global issues. We're just a very small part of their puzzle, and then they want us all uniform. They want us all the same. We're easier to control that way. If everyone's the same, Maoist China, however, they're much easier to control with one rule suits all. And this is what they're heading towards. This is why they're destroying, in my view, it's why they're destroying our heritage, because they haven't got room for heritage, individualism, or customs. Yeah. They want us all the same, and they want us all the same, or as in wealth, they want us all poor. When they say they're leveling up, you've got winners and you've got losers, but they're after the middle classes. Be very aware of that if you are middle class. They're after you because the middle class drives any economy. Middle class provide jobs. Just look at China, Russia. The first thing to go was the middle class, then the jobs, then you are poor, you do as you are told. And that is all part of this agenda. That's why they don't care about localism. That's why we need strong opposition in councils, very, very important. And we need people in the Houses of Parliament to try and stop this. As you said earlier, Andrew Bridge is just one man. You can do a lot of damage. It's the fox in the hen house. It upsets the apple cart. They don't like it. And if I'm elected for MP, I'm not going to have it. I'm going to push, and push. And I'm going to keep pushing.
Darryl, thank you for that. Let's bring Madeline back on screen, because we're back on this important issue of the change in the country. You've come from Poland originally. You've lived in England a very long time, and you're now General Secretary of the Heritage Party. Darryl's talking about the fact that this country has lost its roots, it's lost its heritage. Tell us a bit more about what you've seen. What is it that you are concerned about that you see happening in UK?
Thank you, Brian. I am concerned about everything what I'm seeing here at the moment, because as I mentioned in previous programs, our previous talk, it's not only similar to what's happened in Poland, it is exactly the same what's happened in Poland. It is exactly the same damaging system which destroyed the Polish economy, destroyed people's lives, few generations' life, when we was all leveled down to the same, not level up, this is leveling down, we was all leveled down to the same position in the society, when people who didn't belong to the communitarian system didn't have any opportunity to go to the higher education, to have a job. So that's very much the same. All these things is happening now. They leveling up the society, leveling down the society. So that's why we have this emigration. So much of emigration is coming in, and they create emergency, something what I think Darryl was going to say, but it just was lost between the words. The emergency create these disastrous policies, which giving them the chance to bring the system which we had already in Poland. So I can see the similar way what we already had in Poland. This is really scary, and I think that the way to stop this, I try to be very quick with this. I think the way to stop this is to actually have a proper MPs in the parliament. This is the very important step, but also to bring back the role of the MP as it should be, because at the moment the MP really represent the council. It doesn't represent the people, because councils represent the people voice apparently. So the MP himself, if doesn't have a support from the council, will have a very, very hard job in the parliament to actually fulfill the promises what they gave to people, because this is what we had in Poland. Nobody really have anything to say. That was a group of people running the whole country, depend of people on the top somewhere else, the same people who are running everything now. And I don't know what to say about this, how I can compare what is going on, because this is a subject for hours and hours to explain. Because if you see any sector of the economy, what we're going through, any sector of the culture, what we're going through at the moment, the changes, what we're seeing, they are spot on what happened in Poland before. Losing heritage is the first basic thing to change the society, because if you just get rid of the people identity, people are simply lost. And we can see this now with the amount of news and the distraction with the foreign wars. The society become massively confused. Additionally to the confusion, we have some 100 or even more genders, which is something completely new. They changing definition of words, which is completely new. So they created this kind of overloaded mess in every single brain, and that's how people are losing the value, the real life value, the people are losing the empathy. That's why the animal rights is very important, because this is the first thing which we remember, that empathy exists. And if we can compare this to Poland, what's happened in Poland, this is a breeding. They just going through this period of breeding particular generation. They never succeed in Poland because people got rid of them after 40 years, but they got them back. They got the nation back from the EU. So we really just have to follow common sense. We have to stick to the proper value. We need to respect ourselves. And really, common sense is the first thing. Common sense and logic. If you listen, we have a very soft heart. We feel sorry for the immigrants. We feel sorry for these people that suffer. So what we're doing, we welcome them to this country, and promising them what? We apparently going through the life crisis. So if we care about these people, we shouldn't really welcome them here, because we have nothing to offer, apparently. So you can see that nonsense, what contradicts itself in the way how the politician introducing us to the situation what we are. How we can help people if we can't help ourselves at the moment? So they just telling us every day that we're going to suffer, everything is going to be more expensive. But yes, please come here. We want you here. Then we don't really have houses here, so we're going to build your houses. So you're going to pay more money because we need to build houses for these people. But where are we going to get the money from? We are in the life crisis already. It doesn't make any sense. If you analyze anything makes sense, you just need to follow common sense. Vote for a proper, normal people who are aware of what's going on.
Yeah, Madeline, thank you for that. Just one more quick question for you. Other candidates that the Heritage Party has at the moment, how easy has it been to bring other people forward and get them to stand as candidates for you?
I think that we actually would have more candidates, but because of the obstacles with the short notice and of course the financial side, we probably lost about 15 candidates just in the way of in the process. But otherwise, people are they really want to stand as a candidate. But the biggest thing is always the finances. This is a £500, so that's a lot of money. That is the thing of stopping people to become a candidate.
Darryl, let's bring you back on screen. One of the things that I think I should do, because this is an election period, is just mention some of the other names of the candidates at least. So there's 8 candidates standing in South West Devon constituency. We've got Sarah Allen from the Labour Party. We've got Julian Brazil, Lib Dems. We've got Ben Davey, Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. Stephen Horner from Reform UK. Darryl, yourself. Lauren Maclay, the Green Party. Rebecca Smith, Conservative and Unionist. And Alan Charles Spencer, the Independent. What I wanted to ask you is, have you been able to interact with the other smaller parties and the independent? Is there any form of recognition that you're all individuals that are trying to fight a much bigger monster?
There has been, but not in this election. More so with council. As I said with Brian, we've been tied up with bureaucracy at the moment. Yeah, I do liaise with other candidates. Certainly, as far as council elections go, I have done, and they're very receptive. There's a common thread going through our argument. We know it's wrong. We know the system's wrong. We know it has to change. We know it has to change from the inside out. You have to be in the system to beat the system. At least give the system a headache for the short term. Can I just say something, Brian, if I may, on expand on what Madeline was saying about common sense? The one argument I get from the public, which is completely nonsensical, it doesn't make sense. So I'll give you an example. There's a Conservative voter, and they're not happy with the Conservatives. And I said, why are you not happy? And they say, well, immigration's out of control, this, that, and the other. And so I say, well, so how are you going to vote? Oh, I'm going to vote for Labour as a protest vote. And my answer to that is, well, the only person you're protesting is yourself. I say, because so you basically you're giving Labour your vote because Conservative weren't conservative enough. So because they're not conservative enough, you've gone far left. You've gone further to the left because you want a government that's more conservative. That doesn't make sense. And people get that when I say that. They're not thinking, they're being led down this road, steered. There's a buzzword that's been going around for 10 years now, tactical voting. So that the only people that it's tactical for, and tactical, by the way, is a weaponized word, tactical, to me anyway. The only people who benefit from tactical voting are the people that are pushing you to tactical vote. Vote with your heart and vote with your head. You have to vote with your head and your heart. Forget tactical voting. It's a ruse. It's been put there on purpose to steer you down a road that they want you to go.
Darryl, this is a really interesting point. And I think earlier on you said people must vote. And I certainly agree with that. If you don't vote at all, you just are agreeing to this system and allowing it to continue. So it seems to me that people should look at the list of candidates. If they decide there's an individual or a smaller party that is actually forming some form of opposition vote, they should vote for that person. But if there isn't anybody to challenge the bigger parties, then the other option they've got is to actually spoil their ballot paper, because if they do that, that spoiled vote is actually counted. So people often write comments such as none of the above, or I don't trust any of the mainstream parties, and they actually write that on the voting slip, and the returning officer is obliged to actually show these spoilt votes to the other candidates, and indeed to read out what's written on them. So for people who are in an area and you haven't got the, I've got to say, the luxury of a candidate standing as one of the smaller parties, such as Heritage, or as an independent, then you have got the option of spoiling the vote, which is effectively a statement that you do not accept the voting system is fair. Now, I've just thrown that at you, Darryl. I don't know how you feel about what I've just said there.
I totally agree with you, Brian. If you can't vote for anyone, protest vote. It is logged. They do it in Australia. I used to be of the opinion not to vote. I wasn't on the electoral roll until 2015 in Farage and UKIP, and I put myself on the electoral roll. I was totally disengaged from it, and I put myself on the electoral roll to vote for UKIP. I want out of Europe. I wanted out of Europe. I wanted to use the European Court of Human Rights, which would solve our immigration problem overnight. But I used to be of the opinion, if you vote in this, if you take part in the vote, you're legitimizing their system. I've completely changed my mind on that, because the way I see it now, I see it. There's a certain demographic that heavily votes, are encouraged to vote. Now, if they're voting en masse and other people aren't voting, they could have 2% of the vote, but it's still legitimate because, they have the power at the end of the day. You need to vote. You really need to vote. As I say, there's 60 to 70% of people in this country have disengaged. And I think that's on purpose. I think they've been made to feel so, so disenfranchised by the powers that be, to not vote. They don't want us voting. Communists don't vote. They want us to disengage from the system. Gives them legitimacy. Anyone can come in and vote. Then, minorities, NGOs, they can all take power. As I understand it now, they're going to give the vote to 16-year-olds who are fresh out of university. I'll go no more into that one, but no life skills. So they're going to probably be persuaded to vote a certain way. If you are in the Commonwealth, you can vote. Take Canada. We can't vote in their system. We were taken out of their system a while ago, but they can vote in ours. So the numbers are being, are being made against us. Well, we've still got the numbers. People of this country need to vote. I would say to the voter, please vote. Don't be apathetic. Don't be downhearted, because if you want change, you have to vote change.
This is a key point. I just add to that, and you have to understand what the change is you want, because it seems to me that the Conservatives and Labour specialise in constantly talking about change, which they never define. And I think that's a deliberate trick on the electorate. For Madeleine, you've got our audience today. Time is short. What would you like people to do in order to support the Heritage Party?
First of all, I really want everyone to vote for the Heritage Party candidate. And if you don't have a Heritage Party candidate, please support people who are just in your neighborhood voting for Heritage Party candidate. But also, please join our party, because the general election is just one election, but it's not going to make massive change in the system. To change the system, to really oppose the system, we talk about this so many times. We have to go through the root from the roots, and we really have to go to the local elections. So anyone who really wants to please support us and fight with us against injustice really locally. Think about local election, think about co-option, think about the by-election, and consider yourself to stand as a candidate as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And Darryl, last words to you as the man with your head well above the parapet at the moment. What would you like members of our audience to do to help you in your campaign at the moment?
Well, obviously, the first one is to vote for us. People need to. I've got on my leaflet, people have to play their part as well. It's not just. I don't see the point in just putting a cross on a ballot form every 4 years. You have to be aware. You have to educate yourselves. There's a lot of unpleasant things going on and coming down the line for us. We need to be aware. Look at it. Please look at our manifesto. You just need to do your part, and just basically, too many people treat the government as that they're the benefit. That they're benevolent. They almost treat them like parents. We're the parents. We're the adults in the room, not them. So we need to take more control, and you can do that just by educating yourself. Go online, read. This channel especially is fantastic for that. And that's what I would say to them. Just please vote. And if you can't vote for the Heritage Party, please don't vote for the big boys, because if you want to get rid of them, you're not going to get rid of them by tactically voting for them. You have to change your vote. Give us a try. Give an independent a try. Try it. What have you got to lose? If you think it's bad now, it's going to get a hell lot worse.
Darryl, thank you very much indeed. And Madeleine, also, thank you both very much for joining me today and taking us through the Heritage Party and why you're standing. And I think there's some really good points that have been made to the audience. So keep going, and we wish you well. Thank you very much for joining me today.